As you already know by now, the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer just released and it looks epic. I am so excited for this movie, and I thought this would be a great time to put my own little twist on Deadpool versus Wolverine. Not in a battle to the death, but rather a bodybuilding battle.
Come again.
Since both of these characters have amazing physiques, I thought it would be fun to put them in a bodybuilding battle against one another and see who has the best physique. And before we get into this, you should know I'm a fan of both of these characters, but in particular, Wolverine for sure. He's the only character I've actually cosplayed as, and let me tell you, he's one of the most fun characters to cosplay as, but I'm sure Deadpool's probably up there as well. All right, so when determining who has the best physique in terms of bodybuilding, we have 4 primary characteristics. We have muscle mass, so who has the biggest muscles, at least for their frame. We have symmetry, we have proportions, and we have conditioning, like how lean are they, or do they have a lot of body fat percentage, or can you see vascularity and feathering in the muscles and stuff like that. So in this particular video, I'm gonna be looking at the comic versions of both of these characters. If you want me to do another one where I actually look at Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, let me know in the comments down below. All right, so Deadpool comes in at 6'2" and 210 pounds. That's a really good size, and for 6'2", that's pretty bulky, so he's got a pretty good amount of muscle mass. Now, is it like a bodybuilder? A bodybuilder that's 6'2", if he were like in the open division or even the classic division, we're looking at somewhere in the mid 200s, maybe even high 200s, especially if he's in the open division. But since Deadpool's not a bodybuilder, this is just a really good size overall for someone who wants to be jacked at 6'2". 210 pounds is a really good amount of muscle. Now, if we actually look at his physique, I'm looking at the comics, and obviously there's a lot of different artists over the years and stuff, so there's a lot of different ones we can look at, but almost all of them depict him as being like really muscular, yet really lean. Like for instance here, he has a really good something called a V taper, which means he has kind of a V shape to his upper body. And to get that, you have to have really big shoulders and a really slim and narrow waist. Deadpool does that really, really well. Now on top of that, he has a really good and full chest. He has really good abs, really good traps right there. So he's got a really good shape to his physique. He's got really good muscularity as well. Now, in terms of muscle mass, if we're looking from a bodybuilding perspective, obviously he could put a little bit more on, but I don't want to rake him from like the open division where you see the biggest of the big guys. Let's put him more in kind of like the men's physique division or the classic physique divisions where they're a little bit smaller on the muscle mass in terms of bulkiness. In that case, I think he gets somewhere around a 7 out of 10. Not bad at all. He could probably use a little bit more bulk in the legs, maybe a little bit more in the arms, maybe some more in the lats. And of course, we're not really seeing him posing in all of the different compulsory poses, so we're just kind of taking our best estimates here. Now let's hop over to Wolverine. Wolverine comes in at 5'3" and weighs 195 pounds. I believe that's before the adamantium. And I believe after that, he weighs about 300 pounds. So we're gonna take his more natural physique, if you will. And 195 pounds at 5'3" is actually absolutely massive. That would even probably be in the open division. It would technically be in the 205 division. So typically bodybuilders who are a little bit shorter will compete in something called the 205 division. So they can bulk up to 205, but they can't get more than that. So that's probably the one that Wolverine would be in. But that means he's probably maxing out his frame in terms of muscle mass, and it certainly does look like that. Like, this guy is absolutely ripped. So he's 195, which means maybe he could put on another 10 pounds of muscle or so, but I mean, he's obviously very lean, and we'll get to that here in a second too. But you can see the striations in his muscle. He's got really good muscle mass for his height. I'm gonna give him, from what I'm seeing in some of these pictures, it's tough, but I think I might give him a 9 out of 10. He's got a really good physique in terms of muscle. All right, so now moving on to symmetry. Basically, how do they look on both sides of their body? Do their biceps line up? Do their pecs line up? Do their legs line up? All that sort of stuff. And of course, this is gonna be really hard to tell because we don't have legitimate like bodybuilding poses for each one of these characters, unfortunately. That'd be kind of cool, like if the artist decided to do something like a character sheet, like breakdown where you could see him from the front, from the back, that sort of stuff. And I'm sure maybe that's out there, but if you know of that, let me know in the comments. But I do not. I'm just looking at Google here. I mean, I don't see anything that looks out of proportion here. Yeah, I mean, I've always thought Wolverine had a really proportionate physique, a really symmetrical physique. I mean, maybe in some of these shots, it really just depends on the artist too. I think overall, it's hard to give someone, especially a character, a bad rating on symmetry. I'm gonna go ahead and give him a 10 out of 10. And then coming back over here to Deadpool too, I don't really see anything that looks off on his physique on either side, so I'm gonna give him a 10 out of 10 as well. All right, so moving into proportions, and it looks like Wolverine's winning by just 2 points right now. It's a really tight race. So Deadpool has really great proportions. He has I think Deadpool has more of an aesthetic physique than Wolverine does. Wolverine has more of a bulky, kind of gnarly, like really like natural-esque physique. Deadpool has more of a physique like almost like a fitness model or something like that. So he's got really, really good proportions. Like I said, maybe a little more muscle mass in the legs, maybe, but even in this shot, he's got pretty decent muscle mass. His calves look really big. And yeah, and it just depends on what shot you're looking at. So like in this shot right here, his arms are a bit big for his chest and his shoulders even. But like in this shot, he's just crazy overall. So I'm just kind of trying to take the most proportionate shots of each one that I see. And I think Deadpool just has really good proportions overall. I'm gonna go ahead and give him a 9 out of 10 on proportions. Wolverine, on the other hand, has some gnarly proportions because he's got kind of that like animalistic nature to him. So like in this shot right here, for instance, his arms are like crazy. And of course, there's so many different versions of Wolverine out there with so many different proportions and everything. Like for instance, in this one right here, his arms are crazy gnarly. He's got a smaller chest. You know, he could use a little bit more muscle mass in the torso kind of region like that. I think because he's drawn to be a little bit more animalistic, his physique is a little bit less aesthetic than someone like Deadpool's, so I'm actually gonna give him a 7 out of 10 on proportions. Which brings us down to the last piece of the bodybuilding puzzle, which is conditioning. Now, Wolverine has crazy conditioning. As you can see, there's different muscle separations. So these are his delts right here. You have the rear delt, the lateral delt, the front delt. You can see separations between each one of those. Not just that, but between the tricep, the bicep, the brachialis, all those sorts of muscles. You can also see some feathering in his muscles and maybe even some vascularity in there, which means, dude, this guy is very well conditioned. Even through his suit right here, you can see the muscular striations. So this guy is on point in terms of muscular striation. I mean, maybe if he was on the bodybuilding stage, maybe you'd want to see man, I mean, the way he's drawn, it just depends on which art we're looking at right here. Some of them, I think maybe he could be just a little bit more vascular, but I mean, that's being like really nitpicky. I mean, he's got it. I'm gonna give him a 9 out of 10 on conditioning because I think he's right up there. Yeah, maybe a 9, maybe a 10. It could go either way depending on what shot we're looking at, but I'm gonna be just safe and give him a 9 on that. All right, now we're moving on to Deadpool's conditioning. Now, once again, it depends on which shot we're looking at. Like right here, he's extremely lean. We can see some of the feathering in the muscles right there. I believe that's feathering and not like cuts or something, but you can see the separation between the chest and the delts and sort of stuff like that. But I will say he doesn't look quite as lean like in this picture as Wolverine did in some of his pictures. Now here, he looks very lean as well. His proportions are a little bit off in this picture actually. And of course, sometimes it's hard to separate what's real art from fan art because I don't know the comics extremely well, but just from everything that I'm seeing right here, Deadpool looks extremely lean. Like when you bring up a picture like this, you can see the separation in the delts and the biceps, just like with Wolverine. You can see even the six-pack. I think his six-pack even looks better than Wolverine's. It's gonna be a tight race. I would need to see them both on a bodybuilding stage, but geez, I hate to do this, but I think I'm gonna give him, I mean, like, look at this picture right here. You could see the separation in all of his muscles, even in between the delts, just like with Wolverine too. It's a tough race. I don't think he's quite to the level Wolverine is, but I think he's very close. I think he's like a 8 or 9. I'm gonna do what I did with Wolverine and be a little bit conservative and give him an 8 out of 10, but it could have went either way. So that means that our overall winner for today is Wolverine by 1 point, maybe. Could have went either way. Deadpool definitely wins in certain shots. Wolverine definitely wins in other shots. But I think from a bodybuilding perspective, Wolverine wins. I think from an aesthetic perspective, Deadpool wins. If you'd like to see any workouts based on Deadpool or Wolverine's physique, also let me know that in the comments down below.